Hey everyone, and welcome. Today, we are diving deep into one of the biggest shifts in the tech world, how we went from these massive in-house data clusters to the incredibly flexible power of the cloud. Believe me, this change has completely rewritten the rules for big data. And it all really starts with this one question, this one you hear all the time in the industry. Is Hadoop dead? I mean, for years, Hadoop was the king of big data, no question. But now, in the age of the cloud, its future seems a little hazy. We're going to get to the bottom of that, so stick around. But first things first, to really get why things change, we have to understand the problem that forced the change in the first place. And it all kicked off with what you could call a data deluge, just this unbelievable explosion of information that our old systems, well, they just weren't built for it.
So take a look at the old way of doing things. Before you could even begin to analyze your data, you had to know every single question you might possibly want to ask ahead of time. This meant building a super rigid database structure, then painstakingly transforming all your data to fit into that perfect little box, and only then could you load it in. This whole process was called schema on write, and man, it was slow, it was expensive, and you often had to just throw away potentially valuable data because it didn't fit the model you'd already built.
And right here, you can see the fundamental problem. On one side, you had your traditional data warehouses. They were awesome for neat, predictable, structured data. Things like quarterly sales reports. But on the other side, the modern world was unleashing this fire hose of messy, unstructured data from social media, from IoT sensors, video files, you name it. The old systems just couldn't hang. So with the old way failing, a totally new concept came onto the scene to handle all this chaos. And that was the data lake. Now, data lake sounds kind of fancy and technical, right? But this quote from data architect James Serra just nails it. At its heart, a data lake isn't some crazy complex technology. It's a really simple but powerful idea, a huge storage repository that can hold any kind of data, structured, unstructured, whatever, in its raw original format. It's really just a big folder. And this is where it gets its superpower, something called schema on read. See, unlike a traditional warehouse where you have to structure all the data before you load it, a data lake lets you just dump everything in, raw and untouched. You only apply a structure or a schema when you're actually ready to read or query the data. This gives you just incredible flexibility for the future. This shift completely changed how people worked. Instead of that old top-down approach where you had to know the questions first, data scientists could now work bottom-up. They could just get all the raw data into the lake and start exploring, discovering questions they never even knew they had. It basically became a playground for discovery. But here's the twist. You might think the data lake just replaced the data warehouse, right? Nope. Instead, they actually joined forces to create what we now call the modern data architecture. In this new setup, the data lake is the center of the universe. It's the new ground zero, the single source of truth, the first stop for every single piece of data, no matter what it looks like. And this totally flips the old workflow from ETL to ELT, that's extract, load, transform. Notice the letters are switched? It's a huge deal. We load the raw data into the lake first. Then we can transform and clean it up right there inside the lake before sending only the polished, business-ready data downstream. So the data warehouse gets a new job. It's a promotion, really. It's no longer the big, bulky storage closet. Now it's the clean, secure, high-performance serving layer. Think of it as the showroom for your best data, where business analysts can go for reliable dashboards and reports they can trust. This architecture really is the best of both worlds. Data scientists get their messy playground in the lake for exploration and machine learning. Business analysts get their fast, squeaky clean reports from the warehouse. And the whole business saves a ton of money by shifting all that heavy-duty processing to the cheaper storage in the lake. It's a win-win-win. Okay, so after all that, where in the world does Hadoop fit in? Let's finally solve the mystery we started with. So here's the answer. Hadoop isn't dead. It didn't just vanish, it evolved. Its core ideas were basically taken apart or decoupled, and then perfectly adapted for the much more flexible architecture of the cloud. And you can see that evolution so clearly right here. Hadoop's famous file system, HDFS, well, its modern-day equivalent is cloud object storage, like Amazon S3 or Azure Blob. That physical on-premise computer cluster, now it's a managed cloud service like Amazon EMR. And its original processing engine, MapReduce, has mostly been replaced by the much faster, more flexible Apache Spark. The DNA is all there. So today, you see Hadoop's DNA absolutely everywhere in the cloud. It lives on in those managed services that make it super easy to use. Its principles are baked into modern tools like Spark. And its whole philosophy is what powers the very data lakes we just talked about.
All right, let's bring this all home and talk about the bottom line. Why does any of this technical stuff actually matter to you?
For businesses, the result is huge. It's an architecture that can finally say yes to any kind of data from any source. And that ability to ingest and analyze everything is what leads to deeper insights, smarter AI, and a real, tangible competitive edge.
And for you, as a professional working in this space, this evolution sends a very clear signal. The most valuable skill set you can have today is a blend. You need to understand those timeless principles of data warehousing, but combine them with modern expertise in cloud platforms, data lakes, and powerful tools like Spark. So we'll end with this thought. The world of data is never, ever going to stand still. These architectures we've talked about today, they're going to keep changing. So the real question is, are your skills evolving right along with them? Thanks for joining this explainer.